Hey guys, TommyBryson here, and as you guys know, I'm actually Dominican. So you might think this video is biased, but it's actually not. And I've been staying here for about a month now, actually living here in Dominican Republic. The last time I lived here, I was about 6 to 7 years old, and in this video, I'm gonna be 100% transparent with you guys with what to expect if you decide to come and live here in Dominican Republic. We're gonna talk about, for example, safety, services, the cost of living here, and what it's like to actually drive here. I'm not gonna hold back because where I'm from, and in reality, I'll tell you something, guys. To visit somewhere and to actually live there are two very different things, because basically when you come somewhere and you're visiting, you're like, well, you know, I'm here, I have to go to the beach, I have to go do this, I'm in a resort, I'm doing this. But when you live somewhere and you gotta wake up there just to go to work, just to drive to the gas station, just to get some groceries, life is completely different. And you're gonna figure that out by the end of this video. And by the way, the minute I stepped off the plane here, I brought 2 cats to basically give away because I don't really need the cats. And guess what? They tried to finesse me. They were like, hey, you gotta pay 500 pesos, $10. I was like, where's the form? Where's the rule? They couldn't find the form. So guess what? I did not pay. But there's always a hustle going on here, so you gotta keep your eyes wide open, okay? But it's a nice place. You'll know by the end of the video. As always, guys, like this video on top of also subscribe and hit the bell so you get notified. Now, the very first thing I want to break down here is basically safety. You know, that's the #1 thing. If you go somewhere and the food is cheap, everything's nice, you know what I mean, but you don't feel safe, it's probably not gonna be worth it no matter what. I would not live anywhere where I don't feel safe. And I gotta be honest here, I feel safer here than I do, for example, when I lived in New York, or basically when I was being in Puerto Rico. And by the way, I still live in Puerto Rico. I'm just doing 6 months here and 6 months over there, just for transparency reasons, so you know exactly what's going on here. But overall, I feel safe here. Whenever I get stopped by the cops here, because the last time my friend was speeding, guess what? I didn't feel like I was worried about some being on a video or something like that. No, I feel pretty safe. Like, I trust these people. They're nice. Everything's fine. Whenever I'm walking in the streets, whether I'm running in the morning time, I feel pretty safe. I feel pretty good all the time. But one thing I'm not is an idiot. I'm not stupid. I'm also very self-aware. When you come to a third world country, which, by the way, Dominican Republic is a third world country. If you want to have, for example, a first class lifestyle here, and you want to live like it's in the US, you want to shop at a Costco-like store, obviously those things are going to cost you a premium. Understand that. But overall, this is a third world country. And whenever you have a lot of people that are in need and have necessities, that can create a lot of potential problems. So overall, I don't walk into, for example, let's say a ghetto with a gold chain on and a nice watch and the coolest shoes ever. I look like any normal person. I look like I was poor in the US, and I look here like I'm also poor. Like, I just dress normally all the time. But my point is, you have to be self-aware to understand where you are at all times. I don't put myself into risky situations that you don't need to put yourself into. But if you are always in the middle of everything and you're like, I got robbed the other day, then, you know, that's also a possibility. You have to be super self-aware. And by the way, when I say I look poor, I mean, for example, I just wear regular clothes. Like, you can't tell how much money I make. You can't tell what I actually do. I just look like a normal person. I'm not into like the gimmicky stuff, the vanity. I really don't care about it, okay? But safety-wise, I like it. And there's a lot of options here. So if you come here and you want to live here and you're like, well, I want to be somewhere that's really, really safe, so I can be like, get some confidence, you can always basically rent an apartment where you have, for example, limited access. You can live in a neighborhood with limited access too. There are all of these situations, but overall, I don't live in any of these places and I still feel pretty safe. But again, if you want those things, it's gonna cost you a premium. So part of the game is what you sign up for. Now, #2, guys, is basically when it comes to service, when living in Puerto Rico, okay, one main thing I don't like about Puerto Rico is that I feel that everything is so slow. Getting an oil change can basically take the whole day. Getting something fixed with your car, the whole day. Everything is like a whole day thing, and I don't like it. And I feel that it's because basically people just get paid like by the hour or whatever. But here, for example, there's always a hustle going on. There's always an opportunity. And because there are so many other places that provide services, usually if they don't provide a service right away, you can just go somewhere else. For example, the last time I went to get a car wash, there wasn't anyone there. And I was gonna leave, and the guy literally got a random person to start washing the car, and then brought in the washers to actually take advantage of the opportunity to actually get the customer. My point is, here, I feel like service is so attentive because you have such a massive need for employment, and money is such a serious thing here. So overall, service here is always spectacular. The only place I can see that service is not that great, as far as, for example, like immediate, everything's super fast, is usually banks. And that's like nationwide, worldwide. Banks are just not like the fastest thing ever. But one thing I do love about here is that basically when it comes to like banks, when you go into a bank, you have like deposits, but there's always a person there to help you with like quick little things to save you a bunch of time. And by the way, one inconvenience here when it comes to services that basically usually you always have to have cash on hand. And I don't like having cash on hand because I feel like basically I tend to spend cash more often if I have it because I just got the cash. But everywhere you go, usually you're gonna have to pay in cash. Some places you can pay it with a debit card, credit card, whatever, but most of the local places is usually cash, 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 which is inconvenient, but it's just a part of the game. So just take out, for example, the money you need for the week, get it in cash, and don't take it out all at once when you're leaving your house because again, you never know what's gonna happen, okay? Now, number 3, so overall service I actually like, and by the way, actually very interesting is basically if you're ever driving in Dominican Republic and you stop at a red light and then somebody comes to wash your window and you're like, oh, that's pretty nice, they want to get paid for that. If you are in trouble with something, somebody helps you out, they probably want to get paid for that too. If you're trying to find parking and you can't find parking and someone's helping you park and they're like, I'm gonna keep an eye on your car, they want to get paid too. So again, when you have a need for money and employment, people find all these little ways to actually provide a service, and of course they expect to get paid. It's capitalism in a sense, okay? So it's not like, oh, people just care about money. It's more like, no, people are doing a job, they're doing some service, and if you don't want it, then you just don't take it, right? A little trick, by the way, if you don't want to get your windshield washed or whatever, is you turn it on, and that basically means no, you're not interested, and then basically just go to the next car. But yeah, service here is awesome, okay? But it can be dubious because that basically means it can be kind of tricky because sometimes people that have some extra money, they can get something very quickly. So lines here, they don't really exist like in the US. Like you say like, oh, I have a line here. You got to do the line like everybody else. Like, no, if you have some cash on hand and you can pay a little extra, you get the services for everybody else. It's just how things work here, okay? Now, number 3 is transportation. I have noticed, for example, I miss my little Prius because it saves me so much money on gas overall. But I have noticed that here, gas is more expensive. Cars have a 20 to 30% premium if you're trying to like buy a car. And on top of that, overall, when it comes to driving here, it's not the nicest thing because there are a bunch of motorcyclists like all over the place all the time, and it can be a little dangerous. Like where I live, like around this area, like 3 people are not here anymore because of like traffic and so on. Like it can be a little tricky to drive here. And when you're driving like on highways and so on, you can find patches of highways with no lights whatsoever, and that can be a little dangerous, okay? And because you don't have that much regulation when it comes to phone use, or when it comes, for example, to tinted windows, you can have somebody that's texting inside of the car and you won't even know, and you could be at risk, okay? So one thing I do recommend is, if you're gonna live here, I highly recommend you either walk or, for example, you get a car. But driving, for example, a motorcycle or a scooter is just not my thing. It is a little dangerous, and it's just not what I do. And by the way, you gotta understand when you ask these questions, Tommy, why does everybody have a scooter or a motorcycle? And then you have like motorcycle taxes and so on. The answer is, again, not everyone is gonna be able to afford a almost like a million, well, not really million. It's more like a $10,000 to $20,000 car when the average person here makes like 15 to 18,000 pesos a month, which is the equivalent of less than $400 a month, if you know what I mean, right? So obviously people can easily or more easily be able to afford, for example, a little $1,000 motorcycle to be actually able to get around from work to home. It's a little bit more dangerous, but it's a lot more feasible for the average person. Here in this country, well, in this island, it's more of like, if you have a vehicle, it's more less than a need than it is, for example, you just have one and it's kind of like a privilege to have one, but you don't really need one because most people cannot afford a vehicle here. So understand that, okay? If you're looking to buy a car, look to pay like 10, 20, 30% extra because you do have importation tax and everything else that goes along with it. But do compare prices because in reality, you can get finessed if you don't know what you're looking for. Here, I happen to live here, for example, and I'm in my mom's place. My mom's in New York right now, and I use her car, but I don't like it because gas is so expensive and the car has poor, terrible mileage, and I'm like, I'm spending so much money per month on gas, okay? But expect that, so get a nice vehicle with decent mileage. Now, and by the way, mechanics here, they're great. They work awesome, they do great work, and because they do live off repeat service, they tend to do work. And by the way, when you're trying to get a service, the best services come from word of mouth because you do have like people that scam you, whatever, but when you have word of mouth, that's very powerful, especially when you live in a place like this where your word is everything, is bondage and so on. Like if somebody tells you that's a nice place to go to, you hear that from somebody else, like that person wants to protect their reputation. So when I go to a mechanic here, I go to the mechanic that already says, and they work very nicely and they work very great. There are a lot of good places here. Just understand, if you want some premium lifestyle, it will cost you a premium buck, is to be expected. Now, the last thing is, when it comes to cost of living, what can you expect? Is it cheaper here? Is it more expensive? What exactly is going on? And the answer is fairly simple. It's cheap. It's very cheap. When the average person makes $15,000 to $18,000 a month, and by the way, I mean pesos a month, which is like, again, like less than $400 a month, the answer is it's cheap. It's very cheap. Let me explain here, okay? You can find a very nice apartment here for like 15,000 to 20,000 pesos, like around $400, and it's like a 3-bedroom, remodeled, perfect, it's nice, it's awesome. But if you want something in the higher end, you could also find that for like $1,200, $1,600, $2,000. But even then, it's something that is so nice relative to in the US, it would cost you like in the thousands of dollars, okay? But here, it costs you a lot less. And by the way, they don't have Costco here, but they do have Price Smart, I think it is. And it's basically Costco, like basically like the same exact thing. Like there's a version of whatever it is in the US here, but if you want something premium, you will have to pay a little extra for it because you do have things that are being imported in here. But cost of living here is fairly cheap. When it comes to utilities, like for example, like your phone bill, it's a little bit more expensive. Internet, a little bit more expensive. And you know, things like that, or like electricity and water, I do find those two things to be a little less expensive here, honestly, than it is, for example, in Puerto Rico. Not in the US, because the US kind of cheap when it comes to electricity, especially because we're getting into renewable energy now. But overall, here, I do find that electricity and water are a lot more cheaper. And then lastly, when it comes to transportation, we already broke that down. It can be expensive to actually go ahead and refill your car because gas is a little bit more expensive. But overall, I will say this: if you come to the Dominican Republic and you earn, for example, what the average person might earn in the US, which is like about $6,000 a year, like you live here, like it's like no joke, like it's very nice living, okay? Even if you earn, for example, $40,000 a year, that is still a bunch of money. Like when I say you can basically have $1,000 a month and live a nice lifestyle, very doable. $2,000 a month, very nice lifestyle. More than that, even nicer. So overall, I will say this: it's cheap to live here, it's nice to live here, it's safe to live here, but you also have to be self-aware, and no place on this planet is perfect. People might say, oh, there's dogs everywhere, there's motorcyclists everywhere, there's garbage here, whatever. The answer is, this, at the end of the day, is a third world country. So if you expect to have some premium lifestyle, you will have to pay extra money for it. So expect that. And yes, there are a lot of people here that are basically poor. yes, there are a lot of poor people here, and it's just like it's what it is, you know. Like it's a third world country. Like if you've never been to a third world country, go to some more. Like that's what it is. It's not nice. It's not cool. I want to help, but it's what it is here. Lastly, though, when it comes to like the people here are exactly like they are everywhere else. People are nice. People are not so nice. People are complicated. People are like not very like not complicated. I haven't met, for example, a complicated person like at all, like either in Puerto Rico or in New York or like here, because I tend to kind of associate with like nice people, and I don't really associate with like not so nice people, right? So, but yeah, overall, people here are like people everywhere. There are people that are very helpful and so on. But one thing I will say is you can't get away here without knowing the language, and I don't recommend, for example, you try to rely on somebody else to teach you, for example, what somebody else is saying. You should learn the language for yourself too, okay? So if you're gonna come here, it's not like you're gonna find someone that speaks English every now and then. You probably won't, okay? So learning the language is super, super, super important. So get some Duolingo, get some Rosetta Stone, and learn the language because it's super important, okay? Communication here is everything. And lastly, my favorite thing about like being here and living here is my family. So in a way, I am biased because if I'm here for my family, I'm also able to basically put up with a lot more things than the average person would probably be able to put up with, okay? So me having to, for example, pay a little extra for gas or whatever, I really don't mind. And by the way, food here, I didn't mention that when it comes to groceries, but food here, it's not really that expensive. Like I would say, I find things to be very cheap, but again, it's relative to Puerto Rico and also in the US. But for people here, it's expensive. But if you make an income from in the US or Puerto Rico, for example, like it's not that expensive at all. I'm used to spending like around $200 a month on food. So to say $10,000 is basically half somebody's salary like on food, like that's a bunch of money. So I'm able to buy whatever I want when it comes to food here, whenever I want. And that's actually pretty cool, okay? And it's actually a blessing. But overall, if you do want to buy things, for example, like a Price Mart or like in Santo Domingo or like in the capital, in a very nice place or whatever, you gotta know you're gonna pay a little more of a premium on those items because basically you're getting brands and so on, and those things to import them here, it does cost some money. So overall, Dominican Republic is not perfect, but I highly recommend it. And my favorite part of this country, I mean of this island, keep saying country, of this island is I just feel like here, like life is so much nicer. Like when I hang out, for example, with my friends in Puerto Rico, for example, like in America, it used to be like maybe on the weekends. Here I can hang out with my friends like almost every day because once people are done with work, it's a lot more life-centric, this lifestyle, than it is, for example, work-centric, than it is, for example, like in the US, okay, if that makes sense, okay? So people kind of, like, there's this community feeling when it comes to people here, and I love that, okay? But guys, that is it. If you're interested in coming here to DR, then comment down below, let me know. If you have questions, just DM me. And on top of that, I do recommend before you get here, just get an Airbnb for like a month or 2 months or 3 months or 4 months or 5 months and just see exactly how you like it and test it out. Again, living somewhere is different and very more different than it is visiting somewhere, okay? As always, guys, like, subscribe, hit the bell so you get notified. Comment down below DR, as in the letter D and the letter R, so I know you made it all the way to the end. By the way, that means Dominican Republic, obviously. And on top of that, up here is another video. Over here is my face. Click subscribe, and as always, long-term team officially out.